Hello, my name is Daniel Daly, and welcome to the Basketball Soapbox. Before I get into things, like, comment, and subscribe on my channel, and give me honest feedback, as the feedback that I've been getting is pretty good. People really engaging and talking about basketball, and that's pretty much why I created this channel. It's just an awesome platform to get out and talk to other people who like basketball. But this edition of the Basketball Soapbox is going to be about Ben Simmons on the JJ Redick Podcast, The Old Man and the Three. A really good podcast where he talks to NBA players about the NBA, their careers, and really gives his thoughts on the NBA as the season is going on. And this was a very interesting interview, hearing from Ben Simmons for the first time in 2 years since the Eastern Conference semifinals of 2021 with Philly against the Hawks. And really getting his voice out there. And JJ Redick, I get it from his standpoint, create a honest platform for Ben, open platform for Ben where he can get his thoughts out, not be attacked like he's been getting attacked throughout the media, and going to candy shops, as he explains in the interview, and just really giving Ben the chance to get his thoughts out there and talk about it. And I'll give my thoughts about it. I just feel like I'll compare this to this interview, kind of how Bill Simmons on The Ringer talks with Kevin Durant. There's this different perception than other people have in terms of the media, in terms of people who've been following a long time, in terms of people who are fans just like you and me, of what these guys see. And of course, they're at a different level. They're NBA players who are millionaires, have businesses, have families that they take care of, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just a different outlook than what we see versus what they see. And I saw that a lot in this interview, especially when I was watching. I was like, his thoughts are very candid. JJ Redick's just getting the introduction about talking about Ben and how they met in Philly and stuff like that, and that's cool. But a part of it that they get to is where he says people underrate Ben Simmons' IQ because of the shooting. And I was like, I get it. You're trying to point out the special things that Ben Simmons does on the court. And I'm like, no, I don't think people underrate his IQ. This guy was a number one pick from Australia who went to LSU for a year. And you saw the gifts that he had. You saw that this was potentially people already calling him the next LeBron, crossover between LeBron and Magic. His size, his ability to play defense on the other end, and his vision as a playmaker as not even the primary ball handler at LSU. Like, we saw that coming into the league for Ben Simmons. And over the first couple of years of his career, the only question even coming into the league was his shooting. And I completely understand where everyone, I've talked to some people and they said, hey, he doesn't need to shoot. He just needs to do what he needs to do. And that's fine. And the thing about it is just improving as a basketball player. And as he goes over the course of the interview, he talks about, I'm willing to do anything to help the team win. And in Philadelphia, yeah, that's guarding the best player. That's running the offense. But the past couple years in the playoffs, they've needed you to shoot. Over the course of your career, they needed you to shoot, improve in some type of a mid-range. People are saying the three-point shot, whatever the case may be. Ramona Shelburne has reportedly said that he's always worried about a bad shooting percentage and efficiency and stuff like that, and that's not an efficient shot for him. But in order for his team, they really needed him to take those shots. And I always compare it to Jason Kidd, who couldn't shoot a lick. No Jay and Jason when he came into the league in Dallas and Phoenix. And people killed him for that. But as he got into later in Phoenix and in New Jersey, he knew the only way that he can give his team a chance to win was to score. And even if it was bad shooting percentages, he got to the line a lot. He knew he had to create some type of offense for himself to make his teammates better, to open up the lanes, to open up the shooters. And I've said this about Ben Simmons. He is one of the best players in the NBA. He's been an all-star 3 times in the league. That's the top 24 player in the league. If he's able to improve his shooting or take another leap in his offensive game, he's top 15. Easily. There's no question about it. Like, this guy's talented. He's 6'10", 240, 250, whatever the case may be. Running the floor like a freight train. Able to find anybody at 6'10". And if he's able just to shoot a midi or a standing three, you make the defense pay. So that's what I've always said about him. And it was interesting to see how he wasn't naturally a point guard. Brett Brown, while he was there, said, hey, you're going to be the starting point guard. And I just thought it was a smart thing. Get this guy who has Magic-like skills, LeBron-type skills in terms of passing and finding guys. The ability to run the show, especially in this league where it changes everything, because now you got the 6'10" guy who flip sides on the defensive end, can guard 1 through 4, maybe some 5s in today's NBA, especially with small ball lineups. This guy gives you so much versatility and so much impact on that end that is just beneficial for your whole team. And I understand that. And I just go back, and again, that's a transition to him. That's kudos for him to taking that job on, saying he wants to win, do anything to help the team win, and really bring up that, and take on that duty, which is hard. And he talks about that in guarding guys defensively every night. Luka's, the LeBrons. He says a guy that just wants to score is a lot easier than guys who play, make, and facilitate and score, because you're only focused on one thing, stopping them to score. They don't create much for others and things like that, which is awesome. And he says he does anything to win, but we saw in Philly, you didn't want to shoot. It just wasn't year 1, it just wasn't year 2, it just wasn't year 3. This has been a common problem. And with that, with your confidence dwindling, we saw your free throw percentage dwindling. I'll get into that. But no one has ever overlooked his skills in terms of what he does on the basketball court. No one. No one. And he said he always felt like people were saying, hey, shoot, go ahead and shoot. It was confusing because he says some people wanted him to shoot and not shoot and stuff like that. And it's like, whatever, you said you wanted to do whatever helps your team win. That's the first thing. They have brought in many people, JJ Redick, Seth Curry's, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, all these guys to come in and alleviate the scoring off your back. Al Horford to try to facilitate a little bit when he was there. That just didn't work because that was just a clusterfuck. But he said he grew up playing the game basketball with cutters, moving the ball, kind of like the Spurs system, what Brett Brown was trying to implement. But you're not, and basically when Embiid was out, he said that that was the most fun he had as a player in terms of having all these guys who can shoot and cut and do all these other things. And it's like, the whole offense is not going to be geared towards you when you're not the best player on the team. That's number one. You're not the best player on the team. Joel Embiid is. And the areas where you score from on the floor, that's where Joel scores from. You can't. That's like Kobe saying, I want to play in the paint and Shaq's taking up too much paint. Or, like, just imagine if Kobe Bryant didn't improve his shooting and improve his shot creation when playing with Shaq. They would have never won a finals. They would have never won a finals. If Penny Hardaway with Shaq said, hey, I don't want to shoot. Just the concept of that is just dwindling. They would have shipped you out of there if you didn't want to know how to shoot. Like, it's crazy. Like, Kenny Smith said it on Open Court one time. He said, I think I took like 100 threes in my first couple years in the NBA. But as he went to Houston and played with Hakeem, he got this beast in the paint. They're going to double him. It only makes sense for me to learn how to improve my shot and get better as a shooter. That's it. Like, that just makes basketball sense. Like, any big man that's that dominant creates a double team. He's going to try to look for his shooters. We saw that with Dwight Howard, even though he didn't have the prominent offensive game as a Shaq or a larger one or any of the big-time bigs in the league. He was still a force enough in the paint to create a double team, and he found shooters, and that's why they had JJ Redick, Courtney Lee, Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu, Jameer Nelson, Rafer Alston, guys that can knock down shots around a guy that's dominant in the paint. And I think at the time they made a record of 27 threes in a game. At that time, it's probably been shattered multiple times over by now in this league. But that was all the way back in 2009. So it's like, you just figure that if you're not the best player on the team, you would try to help your team even more. And I think they went over the course of the interview saying that he creates the most three-point shots in the league in Philly during his time there. Kirk Goldsberry broke it down and stuff like that for JJ or whatever the case may be. But imagine the shot creation you would create if you were able to shoot. Make the defense at least second guess themselves than you just driving or trying to find a guy in the paint or just try to drive to the paint or just pass it to another guy and set a pick for them. The ability to shoot in this league is paramount, not because it's the way of the league now. it opens up the door for your team tremendously. And John Morant's trying to learn how to shoot. And we saw his improvement, like in the Golden State series, he had I think he shot like 38% from three, something like that. I can't remember, but he's even trying to, in the offseason, making it a vocal point to shoot. Jimmy Butler, you saw in a couple workout videos of him trying to learn transition threes and spot up threes and stuff like that. Because at some point you have to work on your game, because it doesn't only make you a better player, it makes your team better. It opens up all the things that Ben Simmons has said in this interview to make the team better, whatever it takes to win. If he improves his shooting, think about where Philly is. I've said this to people for years. If Ben Simmons even learns a midi, they could have won to the NBA Finals. Could they have won a championship? Who knows? But Eastern Conference Finals, like Joel Embiid with Ben Simmons never made the Eastern Conference Finals. They never made a Finals. Like, that's the potential that you have. And it's like, this team, and this is where I get back to the IQ part, this team Philadelphia did not underrate you. You're basically 1B on this team because you're not better than Joel Embiid. You're just not. You're not going to get the paint touches that you want. You're not going to get the open lanes like you want because Joel Embiid is there. And they paid you max money. That's what Philadelphia did for Ben Simmons. And I'm not saying Ben Simmons didn't earn his money or whatever the case may be. They paid you max money because you're that type of player. You're that special of a player in the league. Like, I don't get it. Like, and there's one thing about not shooting the ball and not wanting to be efficient and stuff like that. Who cares? Some nights you might go 0 for 5. Some nights you might go 2 for 5. The Philadelphia 76ers will take those shots over you trying to be efficient all the time. And you trying to be efficient all the time did not work. Like, as I keep going here. And yeah, he said he was confused about shooting and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just don't believe that. They go into the process and they're basically saying the process of Philly, where the process wasn't a failure in terms of Philly drafting, tanking all those years, and then getting the draft picks in and then building a team up. And yes, they were correct in talking about that. They did build something there, a culture there. People wanted to come to Philly in terms of Jimmy Butler and other guys coming there. But the process was a failure because you guys didn't win. The whole point of that whole tanking thing was not just to be competitive. It was not that. That's never the goal of an organization who gets a draft pick and then starts to build, starts to tank. Like, Oklahoma City's not building just to be competitive down there in Oklahoma City. Like, you don't do that as an organization. The whole point of the process was to get top talent, homegrown, drafted, and get to the finals and win a championship. You guys failed. Unfortunately, you guys failed. And that's just the way it is. And the way that they were just basically saying, hey, yeah, we did good things there. Yeah, that's true. And then, of course, all types of runs come to an end. I'm a Boston Celtics fan. The Big Three era came to an end. The IT era came to an end. The Kyrie Irving era came to an end. Those were failures. As a Boston Celtics fan, we had some good seasons, but the goal is championship when you bring these guys in. The goal is championships when you draft Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Like, anything less than a championship right now is a failure. And yes, of course, I'm one of those people that play in the injury and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to ignore injuries or games missed or certain things or certain outside factors that affect seasons. That just happens. But in terms of trying to build something like Philadelphia was trying to build, that was a failure. And that's why you got traded for James Harden. Luckily, James Harden wanted out at the right time. Daryl Morey is his boy, and you got traded. And that's as simple as that. And now over the course of this, like, I've talked to a couple people over the course of Ben Simmons' career and stuff like that, and people said he doesn't need to shoot. And I talked to one of my friends, and he said, hey, don't touch on the mental health aspect because that's a tricky situation. We don't know what's always going on. And it's a very difficult, we all deal with depression, different type of outside factors affecting our lives and stuff like that. So, of course, I'm not going to touch on that. They did touch on the back surgery part, which he didn't play in Brooklyn. But yeah, let me get back to Philly. Hold on, let me get back to Philly. I kind of lost track here. So they go over the dunk. This is the only part of the interview where I felt like JJ Redick held Ben Simmons accountable. And he said, you should have fucking dunked the ball against Trae Young and Dino Gallinari, whoever was doubling him at that time. And Ben Simmons basically goes, yeah, I should have dunked it, but I'm okay with that. Not dunking that ball. Like, that's not the end of the game. That's not the end all be all. People are upset about that one game. And it's like, no. It was over the course of the series where they got sick of you. And then the missed dunk and the pass out was just the icing on the cake. Like, that dunk was a microcosm of what was happening in that series, what's been happening over the past couple of years, of you just failing to live up to expectations in Philly. That's why the fans were sick of you. That's why they got pissed. It wasn't that one play. It wasn't that one play. Like, I got it here. Now, Ben Simmons has been an all-star since 2019. 2020, 2021. And against the Hawks, he had 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 8.6 assists. No. Yes. On 60% field goal shooting and 33% field goal shooting. Just for comparison, Joel Embiid had 30 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks during the course of that series, with 46, 35, and 81 splits from the field, from the 3, and the free throw line. Now, just to be fair here, let's just go over that. It was the course of, in that Hawks series, of you failing to show up in the fourth quarter. And it's as plain and simple as that. And it's not just one fourth quarter. It wasn't like that Game 7 meltdown was the only issue. Over the course of the series, in Game 1, you went 2 for 2 in the fourth quarter with 6 points and 5 assists, and you lost. I think it was a 128-124 loss. That's a bad loss, whatever the case may be. I'm not going to blame Ben Simmons for that. In Game 2, he shoots 0 for 0 from the field. It doesn't get any other statistics in the fourth quarter, and they win the game. Game 3, he has 3 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, and they win the game. Game 4, he has 0 for 0 from the field, 0 attempts from the field, 1 point, 1 rebound, 1 assist. And they lost that game. That was a Joel Embiid terrible game. He had 4 for 20 from the field for 17 points and 21 rebounds. In Game 5, you won 0. You had 0 attempts from the field, 2 points, and a loss. In Game 6, you had no attempts from the field, 2 rebounds, 1 block, and a win. And I get it, over the course of that game, the course of the series, you picked up Trae Young. And that's not an easy task in this league for a guy who is creative as Trae Young, as a guy with that versatility, a guy with that creation with the ball, ability in the pick and roll, you chasing them around. I'm not going to say that's not tiring. I'm not going to say that's not easy. But for your team to pay you as a max player, you have to rise to the occasion and play a certain way, especially late in games. That's how NBA players are judged. Does it suck? Yes, absolutely. It sucks. As NBA players, you get paid for what you do in the fourth quarter. Can you put the money on the line? Can you be a consistent player throughout the game, and when the stakes rise, can you meet those expectations? And in Philly, you have not. Like, I can look over his playoff series. I wrote it down here. In 2019, in 2018, I think they beat Miami in the first round, and then they faced the Celtics. You were a young boy. I'm not going to kill you for that. 14, 8, and 7 in that series from the field. In 2019, you can argue this is probably his best moment, is shitting on Jared Dudley. Like, that's when Jared Dudley had his hands out and basically showing him up. You had 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 7.5 assists in a 4-1 series win for you guys against the Nets. And that was the Nets before they had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. They had Jared Dudley, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, all those guys that they traded. Spencer Dinwiddie, all those guys they traded. Like, that's probably your best moment 4 years ago against the Brooklyn Nets and Jared Dudley. That was the guy that you went against. That was it. Like, that's it. That's probably the best moment. And then they have the Raptor series. And then he talks about, like, there's been reports over there when he got blamed for the 2021 series with the Hawks, that he went back to the 2019 and killed Joel Embiid for the turnovers And yet Joel Embiid was 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3.3 assists with 2 blocks. And in that series, he was basically getting swarmed. That's what Jimmy Butler. He was basically getting swarmed defensively by that Raptors team. With Kawhi Leonard, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, all those guys. Kawhi Leonard, Kyle Lowry, all those guys basically. And it's been reported, and I got it written down here, the Philadelphia 76ers were plus 90 in 237 minutes that Joel Embiid was on the floor. When he went to the bench, they were a negative 109 for 99 minutes. That means they got outscored by 109 points when Joel Embiid went to the bench. That's with all the turnovers. That's with all the turnovers, bad shot attempts, whatever the case may be. Joel Embiid gave you guys the best chance to win. And when he went to sit down, you guys couldn't hold shit. All right. You guys lost as a team. But to sit there at 2021 and be like, hey, remember 2019 when Joel Embiid messed up? It's 3 years later. And you going back to a series that was 2 years ago? To say, hey, you guys didn't blame him? You had 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in in 7 games. You ain't rise to the occasion. You ain't make things easier for your team. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's the year the Raptors won the championship, granted, whatever the case may be, but it's like, you wasn't balling in that series. In 2020, he's an all-star. He had that back injury and basically sat out. I believe that was the bubble. He had 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists, and 2.1 steals on the year. In 2021, they were a 1 seed. He had 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, and second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Let's not get anything twisted. Ben Simmons is a great player. No, let me take that back. He is a good player with the potential to be great. And his shortcomings in shooting, free throw shooting, things of that nature, hurts his team. You can look over his playoff career. I just went over 1, 2, 3 series. When he's able to, everything's sweet when he's able to do what he wants to do. And let's get something straight. In the NBA, not everything is going to be perfect. There's going to be some rosters that you have to work with and just play through. Like, Jordan didn't always have the best players. Glenn Rice didn't always have the best roster. Like, all these guys that you can look at were number 1s on the team, number 2s on the team. Not everything was perfect. Like, not everything was perfect. Like, LeBron wasn't perfect. Like, Chris Paul wasn't perfect. Like, Chris Paul had to basically... Chris Paul's my favorite point guard all the time. A lot of the times he had to make fucking lemonade out of shit and just try to make it work. Like, it's crazy how much creativity and creation that he had to create for his team in order to win games and be the floor general and stuff like that. You are Ben Simmons. You are the point guard of that team. You have to be better. And it's as simple as that. And how you become better is improving your shot, improving your jumper. That's all they wanted in Philadelphia. They didn't need you to shoot 20 times a game. Like, I remember when Magic, maybe Magic's not the best case study here because he had Byron Scott and James Worthy to handle the offense, but when they needed him to step up offensively when Kareem got older, Magic was like, yeah, I can do that, and started shooting. Even in the 80s, late in the 80s, early 90s, even he started shooting the ball. Jason Kidd is another case story. Rajon Rondo is another case study. Like, you have to be able to shoot in this league in order for your team to win, or the constrictions of the floor, all that shot creation you were talking about in the interview, all getting those guys open looks, getting them threes, getting them easy buckets. Late in games, teams know what you're going to run at that point in time. It's the NBA. People know what you're going to run. So, you not shooting the ball makes it easier for the defense to double Joel Embiid. Makes it easier for them to hold on to those shooters a little bit longer. Stick with the shooters a little bit longer. It makes the guy guarding you drop down in the paint and double Joel Embiid. If you were able to shoot, that wouldn't happen as much. And even if they did, even if they still doubled and you get the ball kicked out and they see you putting in the work to shoot the ball, you're going to make the defense pay. And that makes the game easier, doesn't it? Doesn't that make the game easier? Doesn't that help your teammates? So there was a lot of contradicting in the terms of the stories that he was going through, and looking at the playoff series, it's like, based on what you were saying, doesn't hold weight. It just doesn't hold weight because you're not holding up your end of the bargain to be a better player. And let's just understand that if Ben Simmons wasn't paid max money and just wanted to be a point guard who can be a transition guy and a defensive guy, that's not bad in the league. But you talking about team and wanting to do things to help the team win, where the team needed you to improve in terms of shooting, you didn't. You chose not to. You spent 6 years in Philly. You were out your first season for the broken foot. Of course, that's unfortunate. But there's a 5-year case study. 5-year case study of you not improving your shot, not willing to shoot, not willing to step up, and not willing to take advantage of your gifts. You're 6'10". No, first of all, no one's blocking your shot. That's another thing, too. Like, you're taller than everybody. You should be able to get your shot off. This shouldn't be that much of an issue. You're Ben Simmons. Like, believe in yourself and put in the work that you show in your off-season workout videos, that you show in your training camp videos and stuff like that. But in Philly, you didn't do that. You just didn't. That's the result of it. Whatever the case may be, when everything was moving and grooving, it was fine. As soon as you needed to step, they needed you to step up. You didn't. And that's just the honest truth. You didn't step up for Philadelphia. Like Joel Embiid, battling injuries, coming back from certain injuries, stepping up, willing to take a lot of shots, willing to be in the game at certain times when you knew he couldn't be in the game. There were certain times when he looked bad. He was in the game, willing to do everything for his team. In Philadelphia, the organization coddled you until they couldn't call you anymore. That's all it was. They couldn't safeguard you. Elton Brand, whoever's in charge there, Jerry Colangelo, when they first got there, all the Brett Brown, the people who safeguarded you couldn't do that. Until the point Doc Rivers got sick of it. And of course, whatever the case may be, it was the heat of the moment, in my opinion, what Doc Rivers said when he was like, I don't know if we can win with Ben Simmons and stuff like that. But for 7 games, you showed that they couldn't. And I understand Kenny Smith was on TNT that night saying, 25 minutes ago, you were riding with this guy in the car. In the game, riding in the game, basically trying to win the game. And the point is that you didn't. And for 7 straight games, you didn't. And I'm not going to say that's not a part of the mental health or whatever the case may be. But let's just be real. The reason why you passed up the dunk is because you didn't want to go to the line and get fouled. You were shooting Wilt Chamberlain-like free throw percentages from the line. That's just the honest to good truth. Like, that's what happens when you get the yips. Everyone's calling it the yips and all this other stuff. Like, that's what happened. And they didn't touch on that in the interview. They didn't mention his abysmal free throw shooting. They didn't mention that in the interview, basically to safeguard him. But it's like, let's not lie here. That's the reason why you didn't want to go to the line. You were shooting poorly from the free throw line. And that's it. Sorry, just doing some side stuff here. But yeah, that's the reason why you didn't want to go to the line. That's why you passed up on the dunk with Trae Young and passed to Matisse Thybulle, who was cutting the lane. And whatever the case may be, it's just like, let's not make something. Oh my goodness. Let's not lose focus here. Of course, everything's making me lose focus now. No, I can't do that. Like, so continuing, all that stuff happens in the Hawks series. Doc Rivers says his comments, we don't know who can win. Joel Embiid basically threw him underneath the bus as well. That seems to be the consensus. Like, they shouldn't have said that, whatever the case may be. But it's like, yo, we don't know if we can win with you. We just saw for 7 straight games of you just coming up short. And this is different than, and I've talked to people about this. I'm like, have we ever seen a meltdown of this catastrophe in the NBA? I think about Magic Johnson in the 84 NBA Finals, where he dribbles out the clock against the Boston Celtics twice. I think it was 2 games he did it. One game he turned it over and threw it straight to, I think, Robert Parrish. I think that was at the Forum too. So, and then LeBron James, of course, in Dallas 2011. People always think about that. Maybe the Rockets in 2000. What year was that when they blew the lead against the Clippers? Was that 2015, 14, whatever the years were where they just blew. The Clippers blew the 3-1 lead against Houston. That's what it was. And I'm just thinking, like, I can't think of a bigger catastrophe than Ben Simmons. Like, if you willingly not being aggressive on offense, you being basically a negative for your team, it was just bad. Like, and everyone saw it. Philly saw it. Like, I don't know what delusion he has about that. And whatever the case may be, and I just noticed this over the course of the interview, it's just a failure to take accountability and say, yeah, I fucked up. Like, I shouldn't have done that, whatever the case may be. I understand the part of the interview where he says he doesn't have any regrets of how things went because he wouldn't have been able to get here with his mental health being in a better place. That's fine. But in terms of Philadelphia, you shit the bed, bro. And that's just the honest to good truth. You shit the bed there. The offseason happens. People are saying, like, you were out. We saw you at Wimbledon, I believe, or the U.S. Open, or whatever the case may be, in that offseason after the Hawks series. And it's like they couldn't get in contact with you. There's reports that they couldn't get in contact with you. And in an interview, he's saying it's bullshit that they tried to fly out there to L.A. Like a week or two before training camp, trying to get in contact with Ben Simmons. Whatever that's, he said, she said, whatever the case may be, who knows? But there were reports out there saying they couldn't get in contact with you. I listened to the Zach Lowe podcast with Ramona Shelburne where they talk about it, and they're like, there was rumors that they changed your number. So if you change your number and do certain things like that, there was Ramona Shelburne said that Doc Rivers basically lives 10, 15 minutes away from the gym you were at. But in terms of what Ramona was talking to people about mental health and stuff like that, if you're training in the gym, you just don't show up on somebody who's going through stuff or whatever the case may be. You try to reach in contact with them beforehand, and then you guys meet. They don't feel attacked. They don't feel blindsided. That's how things should go. But basically, that's what it was. So JJ Redick asked him in the podcast, hey, what was that thing going on in Philly, basically? What was the point of you going back to training camp? And Ben Simmons says, I was trying to do the right thing by my teammates and by myself and just try to do the right thing. And he says they're finding him about all this stuff. He says he doesn't give a damn about the money. I was from the outlook saying the only reason why he went back to camp was two things. One, they stopped finding him, and two, force his way out. That's honestly what I believe, what he went to training camp to do. Let's speed up this process. Let's make it as cantankerous as possible. Let's make this as uncomfortable as possible. So you guys, one, stop finding me because I showed up and did my part. And two, you guys trade me. That's what it is. Like, that's what Ben Simmons was doing to get out of Philadelphia. And people can say whatever they want. On my take, that's what he was doing. He was basically trying to make it as uncomfortable, and he succeeded. It took him a little while to get traded. The right trade partner had to open up. But those instances where Doc Rivers kicked him out of practice with the pocket in his phone, I don't care when he said he had his jersey in the phone in the interview, and I'm like, no, bro. A jersey doesn't protrude like that. It isn't square like that. I'm sorry, it's not like that. They didn't give you a piece of cardboard to fold your jersey up and put it in your pocket. That was a phone. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just call it what it is. You weren't trying to be there. And he said in the interview, when he went back there, he said, Doc, don't put me in. I'm not ready to be here. He was saying they were finding him for not lifting weights, even though he's the strongest person on the team. Okay. They're finding you for not practicing. You're not practicing. You're not willing to go in. So it's a sense of entitlement. It's a sense of, I shouldn't be fined because you know what I'm capable of. And it's like, no, these are off-season activities. You're a member of the team. You need to lift. You need to participate in practice. From Doc Rivers' standpoint, he's already pissed at you. I'm not saying I'm not saying Philly's right in how they handled it. I'm not saying how Doc Rivers handled it correctly, especially if you said that you're not ready to go back in. Quite frankly, in my opinion, your ass shouldn't have been there. That's just if everything is straight up what you said on your end, you should have never went back to Philadelphia, unless it was a meeting to discuss a trade. That's it. Like, that's it. Like, that's the only reason why you should have ever went back to Philly. Point blank. And it's just failure of accountability on his end, what I saw in the interview, that really just was like, yo, you have a different outlook or a different perspective of what's actually happening there. Like, that's it. Like, I'm not trying to shit on Ben Simmons and make him look bad or whatever the case may be, but just the way he talks in the interview and what if you've been following this, Zach Lowe, Ramona Shelburne, ESPN, basically, The Ringer, all these people talking about it. You sold Philly short, and you wanted out. And you got out eventually. And that brings me to my next thing where, well, I'll say this about him. The one thing I did agree with him is when he said he touched base on Shaq and basically said he DM'd Shaq, hey, like, yo, you ain't reach out to me, yo, you ain't asked my side of the story, whatever the case may be, being LSU brothers and stuff like that. I do agree with that. That stuff there shouldn't have been made public. But Shaq responded on his podcast basically saying, as NBA players, regardless of the mental health situation, of course, barring that, we've all gone through it on the basketball court. We've all had shortcomings on the basketball court. Shaq's been swept 6 times in his career. He was losing in Orlando. Got swept nearly every year in Orlando. He went to LA, was getting swept. People were questioning if he can win a championship on his back and stuff like that. So if anybody has been through it in terms of being a number 1 pick, being a leader of a franchise, and getting close and not winning, is Shaq. Earlier in his career before LA when they won in 2000. Right? So I can understand from Shaq's perspective saying, hey, yo, we've all been through this. You got to get better. And it's as simple as that. And unfortunately, in this world, and especially in this game, you want to be paid top dollar. You want to be the man. You got to go through it. LeBron, Jordan, Isaiah, Zeke, with the exception of Magic and Bird. You can honestly say everybody else has had to grit and grind their way on bad franchises and get there and get to win. Get to a championship. Get to the highest level of basketball. But if you're not improving on your end, this is what Shaq was getting to. If you're not improving, I can't vouch for you. There's a 5-year case study of you just being Ben Simmons, and that's okay for everybody else. Everything has to be perfect for you. You don't want to shoot. You're reluctant to shoot. All this other stuff. For 5 years, we saw it. And it's like, yo, Shaq can't vouch for you. And I understand it from Ben Simmons' perspective. Shaq shouldn't have made that public. Maybe speaking on it now is a little different, but it's like, yo, at that time, I understand him. But it's just failure to take accountability in Philadelphia, for Philadelphia, what he did in Philadelphia. And he says he doesn't hate Philadelphia. He still has a rental. He still has apartments out there, still has property out there. Whatever the case may be, his family's still there. Cool. But it's like, yo, you let Philly down for a fan base that would have rode with you if you would have rode with them. That's how I see it in Philadelphia. Now, moving on to Brooklyn, he said it's going to be like Philly on steroids. Basically, with the talent they have, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, the scoring ability. And I compare this to his move to Brooklyn kind of to Andrew Wiggins. Hear me out. 2 number 1 overall picks. Failure to live up to expectations in their respective franchises early on. And then, I don't want to say luck up, but I want to say luck up into a franchise that's perfectly met for them. And Andrew Wiggins, I don't want to feel like you're getting a stray here, but you kind of are, for me, at least. Coming into the league, Andrew Wiggins had those, he's a tantalizing player, kind of similar to Jeff Green in Boston and stuff like that, when people were describing these players like trick-or-treat players. You don't know what you're going to get, but you see flashes of the talent. You see another level of their game that they can take. And while Andrew Wiggins was in Minnesota, he was cool with getting his 20 points. He wasn't the best on defense. He wasn't the best rebounding, as people have been talking about the past couple of years that we saw in the NBA Finals. He gets to a situation where he doesn't have to be the man. He doesn't have to be number 2. Doesn't have to be number 3. doesn't have to lead the team defensively. Being able to be coddled in that system and be able to bring the best out of him. People said Minnesota isn't the best situation. They say Jimmy Butler there. Well, that's a whole other story I'm going to get into another day. But then I see Anthony Edwards going through that same situation. Number one pick. Take expectations. Take responsibility. And calls his team out. And you'll say Karl Anthony Towns is the leader. That's a whole other story for another day. But Anthony Edwards is the leader of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert are just the veterans, the max guys on the team. Anthony Edwards is the leader of that team. Andrew Wiggins failed to be the leader of the Minnesota Timberwolves. But he goes into a situation that's really geared towards him. He has a defensive team around him. He doesn't have to carry the offense. And we saw it in the NBA Finals over the course of the playoffs of Andrew Wiggins slowly progressing towards being a better player. He was an all-star, whatever the case may be. He had nice points, was one of the top teams in the league. Respectively, they put the number 2 on the team at the time. And then over the course of the playoffs, his defense stepped up, his offense stepped up, his engagement stepped up, and most importantly, his rebounding stepped up, something that people have criticized him for not doing in Minnesota. So he got to a perfect situation where he can basically just play the field. And then finally, we saw the star potential. Finally, we saw this level of play that we wanted out of you for X amount of years in Minnesota. How many years he's been in the league? 2014, what's that? 8 years in the league. Ben Simmons has a chance to do that in Brooklyn. He has sharpshooters all around him, guys that can catch and shoot and create their own offense from the perimeter. Nick Claxton, if you're going to be on the floor with him, they're going to make a decision to put him on the bench late in games, and you're going to be the 5. You're in a perfect situation in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, and the returning Joe Harris, all guys who shoot pretty good from the field, create their own shots, and shoot threes. So you have the spacing. You have everything you wanted in Philadelphia. Joel Embiid basically was the problem in Philadelphia for you. That's what you were saying without saying it. And now you have a chance to prove that. You have a chance to be Andrew Wiggins 2.0 in Brooklyn. That's the chance you have, Ben Simmons. Let's just call it what it is. You have a chance to have everything catered to you. You can fly underneath the radar. You're coming back from surgery, unfortunately. You're coming back from mental health. Everything is laid out for you. Everything is laid out for you in Brooklyn. And if it doesn't work here, then I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. But you have every situation for you in Brooklyn laid out for you to fit in, to not be the number 1 option, to not score, not have to shoot. Steve Nash has already came out and said, we don't care if he takes a jump shot for us. Okay. What happens if you run into Boston at full strength defensively? And you get into that situation where they're hounding Kevin Durant. Kyrie Irving doesn't got his shot going. Is Steph Curry going to take the load off? Joe Harris going to do it? I don't know, man. That leaves you again. Are you going to be able to step up? That's all I got to say about that in Brooklyn. Do you have the chance to be Andrew Wiggins 2.0, and are you going to rise and accept the challenge like Andrew Wiggins did with the Warriors, which is an easier situation? Pressure's not on you. Everything's on everybody else. You can just be filler and play to your potential, play to your standard of play. You have everything lined up for you. Can you rise to the occasion and take that over? And that does it for this edition of the Basketball Soapbox. That does it. Ben Simmons episode on JJ Redick's podcast. This does it for the Basketball Soapbox, this episode. If you like what you heard, if you like the channel, check out my other videos until I can figure out how to link it in here. Like, comment, subscribe. Again, give me all the feedback you want. If I'm being too harsh on Ben Simmons, am I right about Ben Simmons? Do I have an angle here? Or just tell me something that I'm not thinking of, not looking at. Please write it down in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. All the links to my other platforms will be in the description below. Check me out. Until next time.